Welcome back to another episode of Remodeling with Mike. Well, today we're going to be talking about the remodeling roadmap and everything that you should know before embarking on a remodeling journey. Guys, this is so important that if you're thinking about a remodeling project or you're already underway, you're going to have to ask yourself if you're with the right contractor and you're uncovering the right steps. So today I've included Azley, our pre-construction specialist, and she's going to be joining me in this conversation about what the remodeling roadmap looks like when you're working with a good company. All right, so the first thing I want to dive into here is discovery and design. Discovery and design is going to be the first step that you embark on in this journey, where you're going to be talking to a contractor and really uncovering what's needed for your project. When you're thinking about design, some projects smaller may not need as much design, but some larger projects are going to have to be very, very heavy. Can you speak a little bit to what you talk to and how you talk to when you're speaking to customers?
Absolutely. Discovery and design is a lot of fun, but it's also one of the most critical aspects of a construction project for sure, and easy to overlook because there's a lot of logistics to it that as a contractor yourself, if you don't spend the time creating this roadmap for you, you're not setting yourself up for success. So discovery is exactly that. It is getting to know your client, not just what their project is, but also getting to know them on a personal level. And that takes spending time on, who they are beyond just we're replacing these cabinets or whatever the case may be.
Some may ask why such a personal level,
Yeah.
right? I know I love to ask the deep questions and really understand what their motives are, but why is that beneficial when getting into the initial discovery with a client?
One of the biggest reasons why it is so important to spend that time getting to know your client beyond just what their project is it helps you identify how you can best serve your client. If you walk into the room and just think everybody's name is Bob and they all work at a bank and they all make the same and you treat everybody that way, you're not going to have successful relationships. And that's really the industry we're in, is relationship building at the end of the day.
I love the fact that you said relationship building, because at the end of every project, I've heard horror stories and I've heard awesome, amazing, lifelong relationship building stories.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think it really starts from the beginning of the relationship and trying to identify who they are as a person so that you can properly give them the type of project that they deserve and want.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when we're talking about design, we mentioned that you can have different levels of projects. You could have a very simple kitchen facelift where we're just replacing doors, maybe repainting, picking out some selections, or it's a complete transformational kitchen. Guys, I did a whole video on the 3 different types of kitchen remodels that I can link in below that you can follow along with. But really quick to unpack it, this is going to help identify the level of design that you're going to need. So through the discovery and you're asking these questions, you're finding out that they want to remove walls and they're going to change windows. You now know that we have to go into a full pre-construction phase.
Exactly.
Right? Now, when we're talking about just a facelift and it's just picking a few finishes, the design's going to be extremely light. And that's more of a design consult or something of that sort.
Yeah, Mike, I couldn't agree with you more. And just the one sentiment I really want to add to that, especially when looking at design in conjunction with discovery, a lot of times it's difficult for clients. I can walk in and say, what kind of cabinets do you want? What color do you want them to be? It's not those questions. It's questions even beyond that. And it's a lot of times the information you get when you're trying to get to know the client outside of just learning what their project is, where you gain, okay, they like coastal, they like antiques, whatever the case may be. It's all about the personal connection.
For sure. And that's when we lean into our professional designing team to really help read between the lines and select materials that make that good fit.
Absolutely. That's where I love being a consultant. And what I like, at least for our company, I tell clients I act as the bridge, and it's a two-way street. So often they're dealing with me directly, and I'm taking the information that I learn in that first interaction or first couple, and I'm taking it back to our design team, and they're able to use it to best serve the client, because ultimately that's always the goal.
Wonderful. When you get to clients that have this massive dream and we identify that you need a pre-construction, that term, in my world, it spells out clearly what you're getting. But I'd love to unpack it here, because the next part of that remodeling journey, after you get through discovery and design, is it's really getting into the pre-construction planning phase.
Yeah.
Would you love to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Pre-construction is my favorite phase of construction, and it's definitely undervalued. So for pre-construction, that is essentially building the puzzle before it gets put on the table. So that is going through and determining, who needs to be there, when they need to be there, what it's going to cost, what building permits we need, essentially crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's prior to actually demoing. And that can save you, and I'm sure we'll get into as we keep talking, in a million different ways, from financially to just emotionally, the headaches that you could deal with and not doing all of that preparation in the beginning. And pre-construction, a newer term in our industry as a whole. And I think a lot of people are starting to recognize the strong emphasis we need to put in as an industry to prior planning.
I love that. My take on pre-construction is very simple. It's identifying everything that you need to do to create a successful project.
Yeah.
Right? It's talking to your trade partners ahead of time, getting accurate pricing, selecting your materials, talking to the town and the officials there to identify what permits are needed and why, and how you have to apply for that. Because the permitting process can take up a lengthy time. When you're dealing with local building departments, even coastal or historic, those timeframes are unknown initially. So it's important to dive into the pre-construction, develop plans early on, and then bring them to the town so you can cross that bridge, right?
Absolutely.
Outside of that, getting all those selections, identifying what materials you're going to use so that you can pick the appropriate trade partners for the installation. That's going to save you from causing headaches down the road.
And it's kind of going back to my comment of what industry standards are today. Often when I'm meeting with clients for the first time, when we're talking about what timelines may look like, one of the biggest questions that I get is, what is it going to look like as far as making those selections? And they often expect that their project's going to hold up because they're ordering things as they need them, not ordering them prior to even starting the demo. And that is one of the most crucial aspects, both when looking to hire a contractor as an individual, but also as a contractor yourself. Make those plans, have them in play before your guys get there to demo, and know when that stuff's already, if not arriving in your warehouse, getting to your warehouse. Have those dates set and planned, because that makes all the difference from scheduling and that, financially.
I couldn't agree more. I know a lot of new construction builders that will not start to build a house without a full pre-construction.
And that's so smart.
Plans, engineering, material selections. Yes, there's going to be some allowances in there,
Of
but
course.
honestly, the biggest hangup when it comes to schedule is a lack of making decisions on time and going over budget because the allowances weren't allocated properly because they didn't do a proper unpacking of what the customer wants.
And that's really where I was going to carry my part of the sentiment, was that it has to do with prior planning and all of that.
I love that. So guys, when you're getting through pre-construction phases, pay attention to the small details because it's going to make construction and execution that much easier, right? You're going to be building out your schedule. You're going to have people lined up. You're going to have your materials on order. And there's really no question to answer unless you start diving into the walls and things aren't the way you thought they were going to. That happens in the construction and execution phase that we're going to talk about next. So quick helpful tip here, if you're a contractor in the remodeling industry, start diving into what a pre-construction process looks like if you're not already using one, because this is going to help streamline your process and it's going to give your customers just overall better experience.
Absolutely. And when starting to dive into that and thinking about that, take the mindset that you are the client. Think about, you don't know what you don't know. And as the contractor, it's your job to educate them and be a teacher and help them understand what's going on. And when you approach it from that model, not only are you making it more successful from the client's perspective and making them feel more cared for, you're making your time with them more beneficial, more successful, more effective, because you can preemptively plan what they might, be concerned about, think about when you take that approach.
Yeah, I mean, we're the experts. We're going to have more understanding of what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So let's unpack what the next phase is. It's really, you've gone through pre-construction, you've got everything selected. This is the part that I love the most. We start diving in, tearing things apart, and we're building, right? So in this section, we're going to unpack, some timelines, some common mistakes and whatnot. Without going down the rabbit hole of answering every single project, I'd love to unpack a couple high-level, easy remodels.
Awesome.
So talking about a kitchen remodel, one of the biggest questions I get asked is, how long is this thing going to take?
Every day.
The easiest answer is it really depends on your project, which is why it's so important to understand what your project is. Now, talking about a basic kitchen remodel where we're just replacing cabinets and finishes, I mean, you can get that done in 4 to 5 weeks. Easy.
With proper planning. It really is just so situational on the project. And it is something that, you can call out early on when you're in those first discovery conversations and make a guess. But what I always like to preface and tell contractors, when you're giving any sort of ballpark guess, make sure you really emphasize with your clients that is exactly that. It is a guess. It is a roundabout educational guess. That's all. Because how often do you see clients, you say something and they get married to it, and rightfully so. The last thing.
Stuck on that.
Yeah. And, I can appreciate that. There's so many scenarios in my own life where I do that. You're looking for guidance. But setting the standard that, hey, I'm going to try to scare you with this number because I want to overshoot. The last thing I want to do is tell you a number that's too low and you get married, and then I have to come back to you with the real number and it's much higher. So I'm going to tell you right now a number that is definitely more, but it's at least somewhat true. And then you say the number, or whether it's the time or the money associated with it. You have to preface that as you spend more time diving in past the discovery, you're able to identify how long it'll really take, because it is so dependent on what you're doing in the house.
Yeah. One of the word tracks that I like to use all the time, and I call it a word track because it comes so naturally, is, hey, I want to be able to hit the pause button real fast and just call out if there's been any discrepancies from our initial conversations to now.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a conversation with a client the other day where I was giving her range figures. I said, based on historical averages, your bathroom remodel could be anywhere between 50 to 80,000. Now, I want to be able to hit the pause button when I'm on site and let you know if I see anything that will drive that cost up or down,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is a clear expectation to say this is a rough range.
Yep.
And that things are still open to negotiation depending on what we see and do and talk about.
And that's huge. That sets the tone for them, and it creates an educational awareness for everybody in the conversation.
Perfect. Okay, so before we move on, I want to unpack a little bit more about the construction and execution phase. Throughout this process, there's going to be things that you unpack and work through. No remodeling project per se goes perfectly smooth.
My favorite phase is there is some element to a deconstructive investigation.
Correct.
In remodeling.
One of the reasons why we've actually marked a milestone after demo, because that's where you typically identify some big changes that you couldn't have seen beforehand.
Absolutely.
That process is called the change order process. And as we deconstruct, you can identify things that go wrong with the project, whether it be some rot that we found, a leak, bug infestation, mold growth. Those are the things that, one, you have no idea what's behind those walls until you unpack it. And then two, you don't want to just cover it up and walk away because you don't want to incur additional costs.
Exactly. Not only that, you want to treat it like it's your home or your grandmother's home and make sure that they're well taken care of. Because again, it's a relationship that you're building with these individuals. You want them to call you back because they want you to come back, or they're giving you a recommendation, not because you did that scenario.
Right. And this is why it's so important to have an open line of communication with weekly updates, progress photos, and even a client portal that we have, because sometimes the clients aren't on the site every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be able to show them documentation of what you found with a solution of how to fix it and a price that goes with that so that they can start to budget towards that.
Absolutely.
Now, another positive side to a change order could be you're a homeowner and you stumbled across a new bonus. You want to upgrade your countertops because you selected granite in the pre-construction, but now you want to go to marble because that's your dream countertop. Those are the change orders that I love to process because it makes the client that much happier at the end of the day. They're willing to spend the money and splurge a little bit, and that's an easy process change order. All it is the difference in cost. The work is still there. You're just changing out materials. Maybe you want to add a tiled backsplash instead of a 4-inch.
Mm-hmm.
So we start talking to our trade partners, we gather pricing, we submit it to you guys, and that's all done through constant open communication. Now, some common mistakes that homeowners make is not budgeting aside extra money.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
One of my favorite jokes to make with homeowners is that we are all lied to with the American dream when it comes to homeownership, because almost every year we are spending, on average, Americans are spending between $20,000 and $30,000 for their homes, between renovations and unforeseen maintenance that your home needs, a new roof, new water heater, those less exciting projects. But that does come into play when you are looking at a project. Like I said, there's deconstructive investigation associated with remodels. So it's on the contractor to have these types of conversations in the discovery pre-construction to set this tone for your clients. But beyond that, it's on the client to think about that, to plan for that. Say, well, you know what, there is some unknowns that our contractor talked to us about. Maybe he wasn't able to give us a budget, but let's set aside a little bit of money so in case that does happen, we're prepared and it's not going to put a huge hiccup in our project, because I know you've seen it too sometimes where it holds up the whole project, and that's really sad.
It is. It can get tight. I always try to recommend having a 10% contingency fund set aside. So if you're talking 100,000, try to have 10 grand set aside that you're not going to actually need to touch unless you want to upgrade, or two, you come across issues.
Yeah.
That's a
great
great
rule.
number. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, one last thing that I'd love to touch on is timelines. We talked about projects and how long a kitchen project could take. Every project's going to have different nuances. And the biggest thing that I really want to unpack is custom work. It's probably the most underestimated when it comes to timelines on what custom work actually takes.
Yeah.
Can you dive into what custom work involves?
Absolutely. It's exactly that. It's custom. Every situation is different and indicative of what we're doing. So that's where you really have to make sure everything is called out, spelled out before you get into the project. That way there's no unforeseens.
For sure.
With the timeline.
For sure. I know as a carpenter, the custom side of things is a little tricky from time to time. You might have the good skill set. You should have a very excellent skill set to do custom work.
Absolutely.
But outside of that it's the planning that it takes to even get to building, right? You're talking about a custom built-in. You're going to have to go through design. And then from there, the carpenters have to going to take that and transcribe it to actual building products. They're going to lay that out, build it, and then finish it, and then install. So custom work, when you're involving anything custom in a very standard project, expect that timeline of that project to be extended slightly.
For sure.
Okay, so throughout your construction process here, you're going to have different milestones that typically are going to be inspections.
Yep.
Right? So as a professional builder, we still have checks and balances. We're going to have a rough inspection and a final inspection, and sometimes multiple rough inspections, depending on the size of your project and scope of your project.
Mike, I want to cut you off real quick and talk about who's doing that inspections and really what that person's job is. Because I think a lot of times people miss what their goal is, the inspector themselves.
Yeah, so a building inspector, electrical inspector, HVAC inspector, and a mechanical inspector. Those are the four that you typically deal with in the residential industry, at least.
Yep.
Right, so if you're building a new house or doing an addition, you're going to have inspections for your footings, all the way through your backfill, to your framing inspections, to your insulation inspections. Your electrician's going to get inspected along the way when he's running his wires, how he infills his boxes. Everything comes back to life safety and protecting you, the client, the homeowner, to make sure that your project was done right. There's checks and balances across the board. So in the state of Rhode Island, it can be very easy to get your general contractor's license. And in other states, it can be very difficult. But one thing across the board that I've seen in multiple states is that the inspectors are very stringent about making sure that no matter how you became a builder, you act as an appropriate builder.
Absolutely. Honestly, God bless all of those building inspectors out there. I think they take the brunt of it because it's exactly that. And it's very easy to forget that what their goal is. It is safety first and foremost. So sometimes when they're coming out there and they're calling us, not necessarily us, but calling out the individual for something that doesn't align with safety, it's very easy to get upset because it's going to cost money, time, all of that. But at the end of the day, it's the longevity, the safety. It's important to adhere to.
You know, one of the inspectors a while back told me the story that I just can't get out of my head. Every time a new code rolls out, people always ask, "Oh, why do they do this? What's the need for a change?" It's so hard to really see it granularly, but what he told me, and I hope this sticks with you guys, is the codes were designed for the big dudes with the big hats and the big tanks on their back, the firemen that are coming to save your life. So for the one-off scenario that your house is in jeopardy and something happens, we want to make sure it's built properly for these people to get in and save you and your family, your pets, anything that you want in there. You're going to get them out safely. Outside of that, it's designed to protect you as the homeowner from potential issues down the line, whether it be lack of insulation, right? You could see high increases in electrical costs if your house wasn't done properly because it's just bleeding efficiency.
Yeah.
So currently it's a lot about efficiency to help the environment, to help homeowners have a better value during the building process, but it's also about life safety.
I think the efficiency is a really good call out there, Mike. We are definitely leaning towards wanting to be more efficient, both from an environmental standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. And just like insulation to windows, there's so many little nuances to your house that you don't realize are saving you money, but also saving the environment. That if one little thing's off, it can completely disrupt.
Cool. All right, moving on a little bit, we're going to unpack some problem solving during construction, right? What is problem solving during construction? Well, as I mentioned before, no project is always going to be perfectly smooth. In the military, we always said, every plane falls to shit after the first bullet flies. So you start uncovering, you start getting into demo, and you find some problems. What happens and how do you deal with it if you're a good contractor?
First and foremost, I think everybody's philosophy should be when you are talking about problems is it's solution oriented. Everything you're doing from the conversations you're having to the actions you're taking are working towards a solution or identifying what a solution is. And part of that is effective communication with clients when a problem arises and as soon as it happens. The last thing you want to do is wait. Bad news does not get better with age. I had somebody say that to me one time, and I think it was very funny, but very true, and I've carried it since then.
Yeah. I mean, some of the examples that you're going to uncover are, like we said before, outdated wiring, unexpected rot, some hidden structural issues. Guys, I can't tell you how many times I've ripped apart a ceiling and seen floor joists from the floor above just notched because the plumber couldn't find a better way.
Yeah.
Now, that was before inspections and before all the permitting process, going back when DIY was a big thing, right? People are hiring professionals more and more nowadays because they understand, one, their time is better suited elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Two, a professional is going to do a better, safer, cleaner job. And three, you're going to have the peace of mind knowing that it was done right.
Yeah.
So really, when you're uncovering these issues, the open line of communication that you set from the very beginning carries through that project, which is why project management teams having an online database where you can have photos throughout that project for the customer to see, everything there is so important.
Absolutely.
And then prefacing to the customer way ahead of time that no project goes smoothly. When you start unpacking things and uncovering things, things may have to be changed. So you give them the expectation ahead of time, and you can be the good person if everything goes smooth. But if it does not, you're not the bad person in this instance.
Exactly.
You let them know ahead of time.
Exactly.
So construction's done. You love your space, but it's not quite turned over just yet. What we're going to talk about now is closing out the project and getting the warranty into the hands of the client. So what is a punch list on a project? That's a term that I've heard a lot of.
We've heard a lot. So a punch list is essentially the last few items to get us out the door, cleaned up, and out of your hair. So that might be from something as small as an outlet still needs a cover to, oh gosh, Mike, I'm blanking. Give me some good examples of some punch list items.
My biggest one that I've seen 90% of the time is going to be paint touch-ups.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah, for sure.
Painter did a great job. Everything's perfect. Other trades come in. You might nick and ding.
Yeah.
Accidents happen along the way. Our job is to ensure through the punch list process that when we turn the project over to you as the client, that you don't have any potential little issues. Now, we do our own internal punch list and walkthrough with our managers and our team, and that's something that I recommend every contractor do. But we also do one with the client, and we give them some time to sit on this because they're not expected to walk through an entire project with perfect vision and seeing every little nuance. It takes time to uncover these things.
Absolutely. And you hit on one of the things that I think is really important is doing it prior to doing it with a client. You have that mindset, that eye for it. You as the builder and the rest of your team can go through and identify where the issues are, where the punch list needs to be created from. And the last thing you want to do is be walking around with that client thinking you're creating the warm and fuzzies, you're done with a project, and you create a laundry list of things. And so you will, instead of walking away thinking, oh, I'm done with this project, all done, you're like, I now need to make a full plan. And it doesn't leave a good taste in anybody's mouth because instead of being proactive, you're being reactive.
Love it. Now, why is a client walkthrough at the end of this so important?
Great question. A client walkthrough, I'm sure you watched HGTV. I'm a sucker for it myself. It's that beyond that final wow, shock and awe, warm fuzzy moment. It is that time to identify everything that's been done and make sure they're happy with it and make sure there's nothing else left ambiguous, gray. It's closing out the project with the client.
Perfect. You know, one of the things that I highly recommend doing in that final walkthrough is unpacking what your warranty includes. I think in the state of Rhode Island specifically, there's a 12-month state law saying that you need a 12-month workmanship warranty. What does that include? A typical workmanship warranty means that as the builder, as a trade partner, you followed the manufacturer's instructions to the T so that you can include all of those manufacturer's warranty along with your workmanship warranty. A good example is a floor. If the floor was installed improperly, the flooring material company is not going to stand behind it, right? So as a builder, when you go to install that floor, you have to follow the specific guidelines so that you can offer that workmanship warranty. Now, if you don't follow the guidelines, you still have to offer the warranty, which means that if you did it wrong, it's on you to rip it up and redo it.
For sure. And on a psychological level, when it comes down to warranties, when you offer something beyond what maybe the state or local minimum is for you, and you say, hey, I'm going to stand by my workmanship from, let's say, a labor and material standpoint for a certain amount of time, that speaks to what you think your quality of work is. That means, hey, I know that baseline, my work is good for this, but I know it's beyond that. And I think that that's one of the biggest messages that sends with a warranty, and a well-developed warranty. I think that's the biggest piece to it. Not just saying, I've got a 5-year warranty. Well, what's in that warranty? Do you have a document you can share with me? Clients want to see that, because how often do you go to the car dealership, buy something, and it's, oh, I've got a 20-year warranty, but you don't have anything to it. When they have something in writing, it makes you feel a lot better. And it makes you feel like I'm going with somebody that is well organized and has taken care of the little things.
I love that. And the last nuance here that I want to unpack really is when you're walking through with your client on the final walkthrough, you're going to talk about how to maintain that remodel.
It's such a powerful one.
Everything from maybe appliances to the special countertops and stones that you put in there to your floors. Everything has a different level of maintenance. And our jobs as the professional is to unpack that with you so that you have a clear understanding on how to maintain your project so that it lasts the test of time.
Absolutely. And I think one way to really, go above and beyond for your clients is not only talking to them about that, but creating a leave behind for them that walks through briefly taking care of those different things. I think a good call out is often a dishwasher. How many people don't realize the little nuances to how often certain pieces of that need to be cleaned on, and so on and so forth. So having that as a leave behind is just another way to set yourself apart.
I'm actually ashamed to admit this, but only 3 years ago, I learned that there's a little filter in the bottom of the dishwasher.
I could remember the name. That's what I'm referring to.
So yes, it's super important to understand those nuances and unpack them with the clients.
Absolutely.
Guys, every remodel will have unexpected bumps, from hidden conditions to delayed materials. The difference between a stressful project and a smooth one is a clear roadmap. So I really hope this video helped you. Think of it like a GPS. You can hit traffic, but when you've mapped out the route, you're still going to get to that end destination. It's super, super important to have that roadmap set in stone and followed to the T. Guys, having that pre-construction process all the way through the deliverables, for me, it's a non-negotiable. And I hope you guys feel the same way. If you found value in this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up, share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, don't know what you're waiting for, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.